The lobby was pure glass and silence. Polished marble floors reflected the footsteps of suits in a hurry. A massive LED screen looped the company's latest acquisition announcement, while a digital assistant in the corner offered coffee suggestions. No one ever accepted. Then the elevator doors opened. She stepped out. No one turned. She wasn't wearing heels, no designer coat, just worn flats, a plain beige cardigan, and a tote bag with frayed edges. To most, she didn't exist. A young receptionist glanced up, ready to greet, but stopped. No badge, no ID, just a soft nod from her and a quiet walk toward the center of the lobby. He saw her then, noticed, maybe for the wrong reasons. Tall, mid-30s, the kind of man who laughs loudly at his own jokes. A company badge clipped to a belt, too tight over fitted slacks. His name was Lewis, middle-tier operations, ego-level executive. She didn't make eye contact, just passed near him as she scanned the layout of the building. That's when it happened. A casual touch on her arm, the kind that pretends to be helpful but feels like ownership. Lost, sweetheart, he smirked. She paused, looked at his hand, not angrily, just long enough to make it uncomfortable. He didn't get the signal. Let me guess, he chuckled, loud enough for 2 interns to hear. First day of internship. Coffee run gone wrong. The interns laughed, not because it was funny, but because people like Lewis made silence feel dangerous. She said nothing, no frown, no protest. She just looked past him like he wasn't worth the effort of confrontation. But Lewis didn't like being ignored. He waved his hand in front of her face, exaggerated, childish. Hello, Earth to the lost girl. Still no reaction. It bothered him. So he stepped closer, lowered his voice. It's a bit rude to wander around executive floors without clearance. You might want to smile more. That gets you further in this place. She turned to him, finally, but only for a second. A calm, measuring glance. Then she walked away. Lewis scoffed, rolled his eyes, turned to the interns with a grin. Some people can't take a joke. What he didn't see was the man at reception, the one who didn't laugh, who looked pale, or the security guard in the far corner who adjusted his earpiece, eyes following her every move with recognition. Or the camera in the ceiling, blinking red, watching, recording, because the woman Lewis just mocked. She wasn't lost, she was there with purpose, and in exactly 43 minutes, she would make a phone call that would turn Lewis's world and the entire company upside down. While Lewis returned to his desk, bragging about putting a lost intern in her place. The woman in beige took the long corridor toward the West Wing, unnoticed by most, but not unseen. Behind her quiet appearance, she carried a reality that none of them could fathom. She didn't wear a badge because she didn't need one. She didn't carry credentials because she was the credential. Her name was Evelyn Hale. Age 47, founder of a biotech startup acquired 3 years ago by this very company. Now majority shareholder to 60% ownership of Halecore Holdings Inc. Technically, she could fire the CEO with a signature, but no one here knew that. She had sold her name and kept her silence, sat on the board from the shadows, voted from behind glass, and once, years ago, she promised herself something: when the time comes, I won't wear the crown, I'll wear the mask. Today was that time. Disguised as a silent observer, Evelyn had come not to inspect numbers or performance charts. She had access to all of that remotely. She came for the culture, the people, the rot that can't be measured in quarterly reports. Because she had heard things, whispers from departments she once trusted. Stories about middle managers treating junior staff like furniture, about female engineers quitting in silence, about jokes that weren't funny, and touches that weren't accidental. She needed to know for herself, so she dressed down, hid in plain sight, and walked the corridors like a stranger in a kingdom she built. And within 5 minutes, she got her answer. Lewis, his smugness wasn't the issue, it was the laughter around him, the validation, the cowardly silence. She passed open offices, watching employees glued to screens. On some desks, printed memes mocking HR initiatives. On others, sticky notes with acronyms only insiders understood, and she knew most of them weren't company-sanctioned. At one corner, 2 team leads were openly gossiping about a junior assistant's accent. Neither noticed her passing. She paused at a glass partition. Inside a conference room, mid-meeting, a woman presenting nervous, interrupted twice by a man at the table who corrected her before she could finish a sentence. Evelyn leaned slightly, taking note of his nameplate. She didn't speak, didn't interrupt, just observed. Then she moved on, down to the 3rd floor past HR, where a young woman sat in a cubicle, shoulders tense, screen filled with resignation letter drafts. Another employee, passing by, tossed a comment over his shoulder: quitting already. Could have at least brought donuts. Laughter from the hallway. Evelyn watched the woman close her screen, lower her head. Then she looked up directly at Evelyn. And Evelyn nodded. Just once, it was enough. She kept walking. From one floor to the next, she saw patterns, not isolated moments, not bad apples. A system. A culture where power had become performance, where cruelty wore a smile, where respect was a prop pulled out only when upper management visited, and it was clear Leadership wasn't leading, they were mocking, hiding, enabling. She didn't take notes. She didn't need to, because Evelyn Hale had built this company from nothing, and now she was ready to tear it down to save it. What they didn't know, she wasn't alone. 2 security guards quietly positioned in opposite corners of the building were instructed to track her journey, not for protection, but for documentation. Each camera she passed was live streamed to a private floor above a room with mirrored windows, and a man inside, watching every moment unfold. The CEO, she had already warned him, "This is not a visit, this is an autopsy." He said nothing then, but now, watching her move through the building, he understood. The scalpel had been unsheathed and the cut would be deep. While Evelyn continued her silent observation, Lewis strutted back to his corner office, a shared space, ironically labeled Open Leadership. He didn't return alone. "Man, that was gold," said Jasper, mid-40s beard, too groomed to be trustworthy. Jasper was Lewis's supervisor, the kind of manager who read leadership books but only remembered the parts about dominance. Together, they had built a culture of sarcastic efficiency, results over respect, metrics over morale. Lewis recounted his moment in the lobby like a comedian performing for a loyal crowd. She just stood there like she didn't understand. Basic directions. No badge, no smile, and not a single word. Jasper laughed loudly, probably one of those NGO types, wandering in to complain about carbon footprints or something. Another co-worker chuckled from across the room. A young woman at a nearby desk kept her eyes down, typing with tense fingers. "Did she even say anything?" Jasper asked, intrigued now. Lewis shook his head. Didn't need to. Her outfit said enough. He mimicked her walk, slow, deliberate. Unimpressed, she gave me this weird look, like I wasn't worth her time. Jasper leaned back, arms crossed. "Oh, we've got a silent protester on our hands. Perfect." And with that, they turned it into a joke. For the next 15 minutes, they mocked what they called the intern ghost. They impersonated her, exaggerated her silence, and speculated wildly, was she a spy, an activist, a lost social worker? At one point, Jasper even opened Slack and typed, "Heads up, ghost, intern on the floor, avoid eye contact, maybe contagious." Several laughing emojis followed. One employee responded with, "Classic ops floor where awkward goes to die." Others just watched. Because in that office, silence had a cost. If you spoke up, you were too sensitive. If you reported, you were overreacting. If you walked away, you weren't team material. And so, they stayed seated, laughed when told, smiled when expected, all while Evelyn moved silently from department to department, her expression unchanged but her understanding sharpening with every passing minute. Back upstairs, the CEO stared at the footage in real time. He'd known there were issues, but watching the performance, the arrogance, the shared cruelty, the way even leadership played along, it confirmed something deeper. The disease wasn't spreading, it had already taken root. He reached for his phone, paused, then set it down because this wasn't his moment to act, it was hers, and Evelyn was just getting started. There were no sirens, no alarms, no confrontations, just silence, but a silence that felt heavy. Watched. Evelyn Hale had crossed into the heart of the company, not physically, but symbolically. Past reception, past operations, now through the engineering wing, where the real lifeblood pulsed: coders, architects, innovators, the ones whose minds built the empire. And they were unaware that the empire's shadow walked among them. The badge scanners didn't blink for her because she didn't scan in. She was manually cleared by the CEO's directive. Her steps were slow, deliberate. Every corridor she passed, every hushed conversation she overheard, every careless comment logged in her memory. But she wasn't alone. The black pendant around her neck, cheap plastic, dull, wasn't jewelry. It wasn't mic. Hidden. High quality activated the moment. Lewis's fingers touched her arm. Every word since then had been recorded, and there were cameras too. Not the obvious security domes installed in corners. Those were monitored by low-level security staff, sometimes neglected altogether. No, these were high-resolution internal audit feeds, controlled only from a locked room 3 floors above. And in that room, 2 people were watching. The CEO, silent, hunched forward in his chair, fingers pressed to his lips, and beside him, Clara, Chief of Internal Affairs, the only person in the company Evelyn had personally selected, not for loyalty, but for clarity. Clara was known for her honesty and her detachment. They weren't speaking. They didn't need to. Everything was being logged, not just words, reactions, gestures, the culture underneath the company's polished mission statements. Back in the engineering floor, Evelyn entered a shared workspace. No one noticed, except one, a security guard, seated in the far corner, scanning faces, sipping weak coffee. His eyes widened for a split second when he saw her, not out of surprise, out of recognition. He stood up, but she made the smallest gesture with her hand. "Don't speak." He nodded and sat back down. He remembered her 5 years ago, when she signed the acquisition papers. when she walked through those doors for the first time, surrounded by cameras and promises. Now here she was, invisible and yet more powerful than ever. As Evelyn passed one of the glass rooms, she paused. A woman inside was in tears, whispering into a phone. He told me it's not harassment if no one sees it. I don't even know who to report it to anymore. They just tell me to document and move on. Evelyn didn't interrupt, didn't make her presence known. Instead, she turned and walked straight toward the security elevator, the one that bypassed public floors. Inside, she pressed a code only 2 people in the entire company knew. When the doors opened again, she stepped into silence. A hallway, white, empty. She walked to a door marked only private C, no key card, just her fingerprint. The room was minimalist, a long conference table, a screen, frosted glass. She sat down, took out her phone, dialed one number. It rang once, then connected. Her voice. .com measured. Bring the board to conference room C, 20 minutes. No explanation, no anger. She ended the call, set the phone down, folded her hands on the table, because sometimes power doesn't come from shouting. It comes from knowing that every eye, every camera, every file is on your side. And in that, the moment the building, polished, modern, arrogant, began to shift, not with noise, but with something far more dangerous. Consequences. The room remained still after the call. Evelyn didn't move. She didn't rehearse what to say. She didn't need to, because this wasn't a negotiation. This was a reckoning. 20 minutes. That's all she gave them. And across the building, in private lounges, in corner offices, in elevators packed with suits, the signal spread like an invisible tremor. Emergency board meeting, conference room C, whispers, raised eyebrows, nervous chuckles. That room was rarely used, because when conference room C was opened, it meant the company wasn't just discussing a crisis, it was the crisis. Clara, from internal affairs, made the final round of calls. Her voice steady, her tone unmistakable. Now full presence, no delays. One by one, they began to arrive. The first to enter didn't even recognize Evelyn. He offered a tight smile, assumed she was an assistant or translator, and sat down, without a word. Then came 2 more, then 5, then the full 11 members of the board. The CEO entered last. He gave her a brief look, not apologetic, not anxious, just ready. He took his seat at the far end of the table. The room settled, but Evelyn said, "Nothing, not yet." She let them fill the silence. Is this about that leak? Is it regulatory? Did legal flag something again? She looks familiar. Is she? And then the door opened again. Clara stepped inside. And behind her, Louis, still laughing, still unaware, until his eyes met Evelyn's. The smile died on his lips, frozen, confused. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Jasper followed behind him, swaggering in halfway through a sarcastic comment about elevator. Coffee. He stopped when he saw the board. Saw Evelyn. Saw Clara holding a file. Evelyn finally stood. Same outfit, same calm, same silence. But now, every eye in the room was hers. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her presence screamed louder than outrage. She turned to Clara and nodded. The screen at the front of the room lit up. Footage played. The lobby. The touch, the laughter, the mockery. Then Slack messages, internal memos, testimonials, background logs, performance reviews from employees who had since resigned, all pointing to a culture of ego, intimidation, and cruelty protected by management. No one spoke. Not Louis, not Jasper, not even the CEO. Evelyn stepped forward. Finally, she spoke. This isn't about one moment, or 2 men. This is about who we became when no one was looking. Louis shifted in his seat. I didn't know who you were. She turned to him, eyes still calm. Exactly. And then, she turned to the board. You own the buildings. I own the foundation. You measure growth in dollars. I measure it in dignity. And today, I'm cashing in. A quiet breath. Then Jasper. Louis, you're relieved. Effective immediately. Security entered without a word. Jasper protested, loud, defensive, blaming cancel culture and context. Louis stared at the floor. Neither was allowed to speak further. They were escorted out. And still, Evelyn said nothing more to them. Because this wasn't about revenge, it was about removal, like rot cut away before it spreads deeper. She turned back. To the board, there will be changes. She handed Clara a list. New ethics leadership, independent oversight, whistleblower protection, mandatory culture audits, starting today. And with that, she sat back down and waited. The silence that followed was not ordinary, it was seismic. One by one, the board members began to realize what had just occurred. Not a proposal, not a suggestion, a shift. Evelyn Hale hadn't asked for change. She had implemented it, without theatrics, without warnings, with a single phone call. By the time the clock ticked past the hour, the effects had already begun to ripple. Clara walked briskly to legal. You'll be reviewing 2 separation agreements within the hour. Full revocation of access, no delay. The legal director opened his mouth, paused, closed it, because he understood this came from above, not from management, from ownership elsewhere. HR received a sealed envelope inside a list of individuals, flagged in testimonies, not all for firing but for audit, for scrutiny, for answers, and just like that, the air changed. People whispered but less, moved but slower. Managers who once barked orders now asked if feedback was needed. Supervisors scheduled urgent check-ins with employees they'd previously ignored. The building, proud, modern, heartless, began to feel unsure of itself, and Lewis, he'd never even returned to his desk. When he exited that boardroom, escorted silently, no one made eye contact. Some watched from glass offices. Some ducked behind monitors. Some pretended not to see. He didn't shout, didn't beg. Because in the end, what do you say to a woman you touched without respect when she turns out to own the floor you walk on? Jasper followed minutes later. A different kind of exit. Louder, defiant. He threw accusations into the void. Witch hunt, mob rule. She's bluffing. No one answered, not because they agreed, but because they finally understood what it meant to be replaceable. The news didn't stay inside the building. By the afternoon, an anonymous tip reached the press. CEO fires to execs after secret shareholders sting. By evening, hashtags formed. Hashtag she owned the room. Hashtag silent power. Hashtag boardroom reckoning. Clips of her walking into the boardroom silent, plainclothed, unbothered, went viral. Not because of drama, because of truth. It was the kind of power that didn't roar. It whispered, and everyone leaned in to hear it. At a local coffee shop, a junior developer stared at her screen in disbelief. "That's her," she whispered. Her friend frowned. "Who?" "The woman from the lobby, the one he mocked." Another employee leaned in, eyes wide. "You were there." She nodded. Everyone went silent, because something had shifted. Not just in policies, in perception, in fear, in the quiet realization that someone finally said enough, and didn't wait for permission to do something about it. The next morning, conference room C remained untouched. Still dim, sacred. But across the building and beyond it, nothing was the same. Emails flooded inboxes, not threats, not warnings, new policies, mandates, directives that read like something from another era. Anonymous grievance channels reopened. External ethics firm contracted for independent review. Immediate suspension of non-compliance management personnel pending assessment, and beneath every header, her name. Evelyn Hale, majority shareholder, internal oversight authority. No title was needed beyond that, but still, some doubted. She made a point. One executive grumbled, "That doesn't make her a savior." Another replied, quieter, "No, but she just saved us from what we were becoming." Then, the moment they didn't expect, a company-wide email. Subject: Open Forum. Today, 4 p.m., Floor 11 Auditorium. Attendance optional. It didn't come from corporate, it came from her. And when the hour arrived, the room was full, standing room only. Janitors, engineers, designers, HR, security, people who hadn't spoken in months, people who never even made eye contact before they came because they had to know. Was it real? Was she real? Then Evelyn walked in. Same cardigan, same flats, same face of someone who'd seen too much and chosen to stay silent until it mattered. She stood at the center of the stage. No mic. No presentation. Just a story. "I built this company in a garage," she said calmly, "with people who didn't ask where you came from, only what you could build." She scanned the room, then we grew. And something broke. She paused. "I sold the name, the patents, the tools, but I kept something." She pointed gently to her temple, the vision, and then to her chest, the standard. She let that linger. "Then I walked these halls yesterday. I saw arrogance dressed as leadership, humor twisted into humiliation, and worst of all, silence dressed as professionalism. No one moved." Evelyn continued. "You may not have recognized me yesterday, but I recognized you." The tired eyes, the second guessing, the fear of speaking up. She held up a single printed Slack message. "Avoid eye contact. She may be contagious." A ripple of shame across the room. Evelyn lowered it. That message didn't disappoint me. The laughter afterward did. She took a breath and then, "I'm not here to fire more people. I'm not here to make examples. I'm here to make culture." One person began to clap. Then two. Then the room erupted. Not out of obligation, out of relief, because someone had said out loud what they had whispered for years. Someone had finally flipped the mirror. She raised her hand, calm again. "One last thing," she said. "You don't have to believe. I'll fix it. Just believe this. I'm not leaving until it's fixed." Then she walked out. Same walk. Same silence. But this time, they followed it with reverence. 2 days later, the world knew. Not because Evelyn called a press conference, not because a PR team crafted the perfect spin, but because someone, a janitor, posted a silent 12-second clip. Evelyn Hale walking out of the building. Same cardigan, same tote bag, a slow, quiet stride through the lobby. And behind her, every employee in sight standing. No clapping, no cameras, just stillness. Like a procession, like respect. The clip went viral in hours. No music added, no narration, No hashtags. Just one caption. Some people don't need to shout, they own the building. It spread across LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, corporate forums, WhatsApp groups, in boardrooms and classrooms, in HR training slides and leadership seminars. Suddenly, everyone had an Evelyn Hale story to tell. Some real, some imagined, all symbolic. And quietly, behind the scenes, her changes stuck, retention rose, turnover dropped. Respect became policy, not a performance. And those who remained, they didn't fear audits. They welcomed them because now, the power that walked the halls didn't wear suits of armor. It wore truth. In one interview, the CEO finally spoke. She never raised her voice, he said, but the entire company listened. He paused. And some of us will never forget what silence can do in the right hands. Evelyn Hale never returned to the spotlight, but her name remained on one plaque, near the lobby where Lewis once made his joke, where Jasper once laughed, where careers rose from connections and crumbled from arrogance. The plaque read, "Leadership is not volume, it's consequence." Beneath that, in honor of Evelyn Hale, founder, witness, standard, and just like that, she was gone. But the message stayed. You never know who's watching behind a quiet face. Could be the power to change everything. Evelyn Hale didn't scream. She didn't threaten. She didn't demand respect. She revealed the truth and let the building collapse under its own weight. Now I ask you, what would you have done if you were Lewis? Would you recognize power if it walked past you in silence? Tell us in the comments. Let this story echo far beyond this screen. Share it with someone who believes in quiet strength, with someone who's been ignored, with someone who walks with dignity even when no one's looking. Subscribe to Millionaire Curve, because real power doesn't wear a crown, it wears silence. And when it speaks, the world listens.